Tuesday bullet points for you. Michigan man, the best ever. As Brady leads the Patriots to the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, we'll talk a bit about that. Mitch McConnell is trying to get away from Donald Trump on some of his stances when it comes to immigration and other issues. We'll talk about that. Donald Trump, though, he's right out front. His Super Bowl interview with Bill O'Reilly, we'll have excerpts from that, several different comments from the president on a variety of topics, including him picking the Patriots to win by 8, but they only won by 6, so therefore the Democrats should have a field day because Donald Trump exaggerated. We'll have something on that. On the program today, Allan Saxe, Kathy Hoekstra, Paul Brandus, Tom Borelli, and a whole lot more. I mean, it's such an action-packed show, you better get an extra cup of coffee. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is The Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, my friends, a little tired this morning. Kept thinking, well, this game's probably over. It's 28-3. It's the third quarter. Well, I'll just stick around a little bit longer. And the longer I stuck around, the more the Patriots came to life. The more the Patriots came to life, the more I stuck around. And then I watched the greatest comeback in NFL history. It was impressive. Tom Brady led the impossible comeback down by 25 points halfway through the third quarter. He threw for a record 466 yards, 2 touchdowns, became the MVP again, won his 5th Super Bowl title. Unbelievable. And the first Super Bowl to go to overtime, the Patriots marched right down the field and punched it in after scoring 19 points in the fourth quarter, including 2 two-point conversions to bring it back. He's the first quarterback with 5 rings, first player to win the MVP 4 times. Yeah, he's a Michigan man. And listen, even if you're a Sparty fan, I get it. Or if you don't care about college football or professional football, I get that too. But here's the thing. You can respect greatness. You can respect somebody that is the best ever. I'll say that. Now, concerning the commercials. I saw one great commercial last night. Oh, and Lady Gaga. She didn't really cross the line. She sang her songs. She, some innuendo and so forth, I suppose, but she did not become openly political. Good move. Good move for her. Good move for the league. Good move for America. So Lady Gaga left it alone, and I guess I'll say this. I'm kind of tired of the 84 Lumber and Coca-Cola crowd and all the rest of the politically active advertisers bearing us in the PC message that everybody deserves to be an American and everybody deserves to live in America. Everybody deserves to be here, and if you don't believe that, apparently, will make you feel guilty and beat you down for having a different opinion. Now, the question here today, is that true? Does everybody deserve to be an American? We are a nation of immigrants, that's quite true, and Irish and Chinese and people from all ends of the earth came here, but does that mean our door that it should never be guarded? Is ours a nation that, because we were born of immigrants, we're required to take anyone and everyone that comes down the pike? It seems to me, at the risk of being called a nativist, which I am, by the way, we should be prudent and careful about who comes here and what their intentions are. It seems to me that in a world that is more dangerous than it was just a couple of days ago, or decades ago, that is, we should be even more diligent about who gets the keys to enter the America that I have been part of building for the last 50 years, along with you, with sweat and contribution and tax dollars and effort. If people want to come here and change the fabric that is America, why should we accept that? The answer, quite simply, is that we should not. This is a nation, like all nations, with traditions and culture that must be respected. If you're coming here with the intention of changing whatever you can under the cover of you're racist and bigoted, if you don't take everyone from everywhere all the time, this is complete nonsense, and of course you know that. Why is it we don't hear people of color that came here from, say, East Pakistan, India, or Burma screaming that they're not being treated right, that they're victims? Why is the enrollment of Asian students higher than those of African Americans and Latinos at almost every one of America's elite colleges and universities? Why don't we see those immigrants marching in the streets? It seems to me that the most common protester I recognize in the streets screaming about being victims and unfair treatment and demanding justice, well, they appear to be white kids from privileged backgrounds that were probably coddled too much by mommy and daddy and told how lovely they were and given participation ribbons. So here's part of my solution for you. I'll break it down. Number one, every kid complaining about capitalism and its evil corporations should immediately give up all of their iPhones, Androids, laptops, drones, and anything else connected to the American dream electronically. Every person stricken with white privilege syndrome and living in the lily-white suburbs should immediately give up their home to a person in need, preferably a person of color, that has been victimized by living in America. Every single person convinced that man is behind the idea of global warming should immediately give away every vehicle that has an internal combustion engine and remove every product derived from petroleum products in their lives, which includes, but is not limited to, the following: all plastic products found just about everywhere in the world, nearly most of the clothing you wear, fire retardant products, medicines, paint, makeup, and 10,000 other items that could be listed by actual scientists in an hour or so. Every person that thinks that America is too rich, too powerful, and too arrogant should put their name and address on the internet right now and offer to trade places with someone in a third world nation so they can be honest about their motivation and their political, aspirations. The point is this. I'm tired of people running this country down, and more importantly, running down the people that are their neighbors and attacking the people they voted for in this nation. I'm all in for America, you see, and I'm sick and tired of this notion that everybody should be able to live here no matter what. We should just open the doors and get rid of the borders. It's abject foolishness. And I'm not going to sit idly by while a bunch of coddled college kids, scream insults at me because they know nothing about the world, because they came from privileged background, went to privileged universities, having full meals and nice clothes and nice cars to drive while screaming about the evils of capitalism, using all of the things that were the fruits of capitalism. The absurdity is over the top. So does everybody deserve to live here? No. I'm sorry. No. Pretty much that simple. What do you think about it? The hotline number, 888-900-9966. If you want to join the conversation, and you should. 888-900-9966, the number to get involved with the conversation today. When we come back, we'll hear from Donald Trump, the president, on some of the questions asked by Bill O'Reilly last night. This hour of the program brought to you by DTE Energy, providing safe, reliable natural gas to businesses across Michigan. DTE Energy. Know your own power.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
Something we talk about a lot in our household, and I tell my kids, is it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And how you finish is how Tom Brady will be remembered. Better now than Joe Montana or Terry Bradshaw or any of the rest. Elway, Manning, doesn't matter. Brady selected in the 6th round of the NFL draft years ago. That also goes to my oft-repeated sage. Like I said, it's not how you start, but how you finish. Is Brady the best ever? Hard to argue That's not the case today. It'd be one thing if he won the football game yesterday. It's the manner in which he led the Patriots to victory in the football game. Down by 25 points halfway through the third. Rings up 19 unanswered. And then 25 unanswered. And then takes the game-winning drive in overtime. Absolutely incredible. Now, before the game, President Trump predicted the Patriots would win by 8, so I'm sure that the Democrats will have something to say about that he was wrong about his prediction. You see, he exaggerated. The Patriots had to go to overtime, and they only won by 6. Now, I just got a note from a listener who said, well, yeah, that's true, but if Brady had been allowed to go for 2, they'd have won by 8, and Trump would be right. But the game was already over, so maybe that's true. Let's see here. Let's talk about, I don't know, Trump talked about pretty much everything. How about sanctuary cities? It's D, clip D, as in David there, Alex. All right, what's that? All right, go ahead and take it. It's sanctuary cities.
Well, I think it's ridiculous, sanctuary cities. As you know, I'm very much opposed to sanctuary cities. They breed crime. There's a lot of problems. If we have to, we'll defund. We give tremendous amounts of money to California.
So you're going to defund.
California, in many ways, is out of control, as you know. Obviously, the voters agree. Otherwise, they wouldn't have voted for me.
So defunding is your weapon of choice.
Well, it's a weapon. I don't want to defund a
But
state
you're willing
or a
to do
city. I don't want to defund anybody. I want to give them the money they need to properly operate as a city or a state. If they're going to have sanctuary cities, we may have to do that. Certainly that would be a weapon.
That would be at least one. Of course, the hottest topic lately has been the travel ban. The travel ban getting tremendous amount of discussion. A federal judge in Boston basically upholding the ban over the weekend, and then a federal judge in the state of Washington striking it down. What is interesting about the state of Washington decision, which I have in front of me, I printed it off and read the whole thing. It's only 6 pages. If you know anything about, political or legal briefs, 6 pages is nothing. And this guy basically took over the entire nation on the 3rd of February. Now, the Boston brief was 21 pages, right? 21 pages, and had a lot more references and case citation. This 6-page brief is weak. Now it'll go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, then it'll go to the Supreme Court, because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is no court of appeals at all. It is a liberal bastion of California thinking for the most part. It's the most liberal court in America, so they don't really care about what the law says, is my estimation. They care about what the agenda is, and if they can strike down the president, that'll be their goal. We'll see how that plays out. Let's see. Also, the conversation about Vladimir Putin. Here's President Trump with Bill O'Reilly of Fox News. Again, this happens every year during the Super Bowl. The president sits down with whichever network is hosting the Super Bowl, which for the next couple of years is Fox, and asked about Vladimir Putin. It's clip B. Clip B. Vladimir Putin, go.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you?
but
Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and Islamic terrorism all over the world,
right,
major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with him? I have no idea.
He's a killer, though. Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent?
I don't know of any government leaders that are killers in America.
Well, take a look at what we've done, too. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've been against the war in Iraq from the beginning.
Yeah, mistakes are different than...
A lot of mistakes, okay, but a lot of people were killed. So, a lot of killers around, believe me.
And so he's talking about Putin and the fight against radical Islamic terrorism. It's interesting to note that last night during a Super Bowl event that Ivy and I went to, a gentleman pulled me aside. His mother was born in Bangladesh in 1934, known as East Pakistan at that time. There was East Pakistan and West Pakistan. East Pakistan became Bangladesh, and West Pakistan is Pakistan as we know it today. Said most of his entire family was slaughtered by Muslims with machetes in the 1930s. And his mother survived, fled to India, got an education, made her way to America. And I said, well, India has the second largest population of Muslims in the world. It's something like 135 million people. And I said, I don't hear about India having problems. He says, India has problems every day. Riots and clashes between Muslims and Hindus every day. Bloodshed every single day. You just don't hear about it here in the United States. And then I was doing some reading about a place called Dewsbury, England. A traditionally, Anglo community that's been filled with Muslims from the Middle East. That you basically can't even go now. It has Sharia courts. It has Sharia law in England. Look it up, Dewsbury, Dewsbury. Educate yourselves. I mean, there's a reason not to let the floodgates open. And no, everybody doesn't deserve to live here, especially if they don't intend to assimilate. Back to where the conversation began. 25 after, you're listening to a Monday edition of the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes football, sometimes fishing, and then a lot of politics. It's kind of the way things work. Some people see a metaphor of this great comeback somehow being a metaphor for the election year of 2016. I just see a great football team that came from impossible odds to come back and win. I watched one of those graphs where it showed the mathematical likelihood of which team was going to win. And there, for a period of time, it was 99% certain that the Falcons would win. Maybe that's the parallel to draw. My next guest, the Professor Allan Saxe here. He's a football fan, too. Professor, welcome to the program.
I drew that metaphor as well, but I want to be Tom Brady.
Who doesn't?
I want to be Tom Brady. Wow, a beautiful wife, beautiful children, multi-billion-dollar contract. But I'm sure, but the bad thing is, I think his mother has a bad illness, and I appreciate that. I've had that in my family too over the years.
Yeah, he didn't talk much about that. Yeah, his mom is sick.
Fun.
They're not saying exactly what's going on, but it's not good. Not good. But I heard a story yesterday that Tom Brady, when he was picked by the Patriots in the 6th round,
wow,
he spoke with Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, a good friend, by the way, of Donald Trump.
Right, correct.
Whose wife died a few years ago, and Donald Trump was on the phone with him once a week for a year. We heard that story.
Right. His wife died, I think he said, of ovarian cancer.
Yeah, but Tom Brady goes to Mr. Kraft and says, I just want to thank you and tell you it's the best decision this organization has ever made.
That's great.
And that was years ago, and you know what? It was the best decision that organization ever made.
That Mr. Kraft is a very nice man. I've certainly never met him or anything, but just the way I listen to him on television a lot, he seems like a very nice gentleman.
Yeah. Well, there it is. It's just one of those things about great sports and great competition and great comebacks. America, we have this, even today, sometimes we have this underdog mentality of, we've got to fight back and rally, which is kind of where we are right now,
exactly.
Politically speaking. Some people think we need to fight back and rally, so no matter how far behind we are, we're still American. I think that's maybe that's the metaphor to take away.
Absolutely. I have a question going back to the immigration issue that I'm asking you questions. I've always argued to my classes, or not argued, mentioned in my classes, that a federal district judge can only make decisions that affect his own territory, his own geographical territory. How does one federal judge make a ruling?
He can't.
For the whole country.
He can't, but they're going to let it stand because it's in California. All right, it's in Washington, so it's in the Ninth Circuit, which is California, Washington, and Oregon, the most liberal circuit in America.
How does he get away with this one ruling for the whole country when he's a federal district judge?
Well, he shouldn't. And in fact, I want to direct your attention to the federal district judge from Boston who denied the extension of the stay earlier with a 21-page decision that was well thought out, had lots of precedent, well written. I read that decision, and then I went and read the 6-page decision from the state of Washington, where he said, the the nation was the president not likely to prevail in this matter. The president is likely to prevail, and it's a very short brief. It's 6 pages, and the first 3.5 pages are about some background and his conclusion. There's not much to it from this judge, and people are like, well, he was a George W. Bush appointee, and so what?
That's right, exactly. So that tells you a lot right there. But I still don't understand the district court, why the U.S. Supreme Court would let that stand on appeal. That's just outrageous to me, if that ever would happen. Or even the Ninth Circuit Court, which is very, very liberal itself on the...
right, but it's an activist court. That's my point. My point being is the courts don't function the way they should. They become very activist courts. They become very activist courts that are agenda-driven, not driven by the rule of law.
Then President Trump is right. The courts have lost their authority in many, many ways.
Well, that's right. When you're following an agenda, an ideology, and not following the law, just like Gorsuch said, if you like every decision you make, you're probably not a very good judge. And you may remember Antonin Scalia.
That's right.
He would say that, I write some pretty bad decisions if you look at the way that they're written. He goes, but I'm following the law because so my decisions are bad. The laws that are written are bad, but I have to follow bad laws. It's not my job. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. It's not my job to write the laws. That's the job of the legislature. My job is to interpret what they wrote, no matter how bad it is.
But for the court to ignore its own parameters, its own protocol, I've never seen that happen, ever.
No, neither have I. So that's where we are, though, and it's going to end up in the Supreme Court. The question is when.
It'll be a long time if it ever reaches the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court will take another 8-9 months to render a decision, unless they expedite it,
Well, I wrote a column here yesterday, and the question is this, and I just went through this here a few minutes ago on the program, but the baseline question is this: does everybody deserve to live in America? Because to listen to the liberals, anybody, anytime, anywhere can come here to America. We should have no restriction on it. We're a nation of immigrants, and therefore everybody should come anytime they want. All the time.
I'll go back to the first thing I mentioned, and I want to be Tom Brady.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the other thing. The Statue of Liberty, give us your huddled masses, this and that. If I hear one more liberal commentator give me the idea or the connotation that somehow that's in the Constitution.
That's right.
It's a poem on a statue, people.
That's right.
It's a poem on a... these people give you the idea, well, it's on the Statue of Liberty, and so what? It's a nice saying, and it's great.
I'm laughing, but it is a tragedy. Another thing that I keep wondering about, a lot of stuff has aggravated me that plays on my brain that I wanted to bring up with you this morning. Last week, we find out that that President Obama gave $9.3 billion to the United Nations. Where does he get that money from? Did Congress appropriate it?
Again, that's not legal. My bigger concern, though, and I'll explore this a little bit more with you today, my biggest concern heading into a Donald Trump administration was that Donald Trump would take the executive order to the next level, use it more often than Barack Obama. Now, that concerns me. I've seen a lot of this so far. Now, in his defense, he's been picking the low-hanging fruit, reversing executive orders from Barack Obama at a blistered pace, and he's run into trouble with this first one. Now, maybe they'd be better off if they rewrote the executive order and how they maintain refugee status and how they, control that more closely coming in. But I am concerned that Donald Trump will use the executive order more often than he should. Let's be honest. We know that a good foundation in law comes from the legislature. That's where it has to start. We need Congress involved.
It is all very disturbing to me. Everything from the federal district court ruling to giving $9.3 billion to the United Nations, to possibly a lot of Obama holdovers, making life very difficult for President Trump. All those things are very disturbing.
Agreed. The question is, how do you tell a president, you can't use these things? We've got to find a way to reel in the executive power from a guy who obviously is the executive. And the courts. And the legislature has to take its rightful role, because right now, this country was designed to have a weak executive, really, and a stronger legislature. And it's happened the other way around. The legislature, the Congress, the Senate seem to get weaker while the president gets stronger. Now, hold the thoughts right there, because we're going to talk about it more after the break here. We are with Professor Allan Saxe, Professor of Political Science at the University of Texas in Arlington here on the program today. We're going to talk more about Donald Trump. We'll talk about what Dianne Feinstein has to say. She actually agrees with him on an important point. We'll talk about that. And so much more. It's Monday here on the program. We'll be right back.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
When the lights go down in the city and the sun shines on.
All right, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say it again. Kellyanne Conway might want to take a vacation. All right, she's had been a hell of a campaign, a hell of a run for a few months. Time to take a break. She's made a couple of serious gaffes that'll be with her probably forever. Alternative facts, and then the Bowling Green massacre. Now concerning the Bowling Green massacre, however, Bowling Green, Kentucky, some terrorists were found with weapons. They intended to make a serious attack there. It didn't happen, but Kellyanne Conway referred to it as the Bowling Green massacre, and then she was attacked for saying something fake and so on and so forth. The good news is there would have been a massacre in Bowling Green if not for our people stepping in and stopping it from happening. Terrorists were in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Terrorists were there ready to do great harm to America and American citizens and great bloodshed. And it was stopped. And apparently this is a laughing matter to those on the left. It's not a laughing matter to me. Now, did Kellyanne Conway make a mistake? Sure. She probably needs a vacation. Omarosa should be put in immediately, because every time I see her in front of the camera, she's terrific, frankly. Back with the professor now, Allan Saxe on the program. Professor, let's keep rolling.
I agree with you. Kellyanne Conway has really been good, but probably she's also had a little bit, maybe too much exposure as well.
Well, she's tired. I mean, she made a couple of mistakes here.
I kept thinking to myself, how in the world does she make it every morning like that?
In the Bowling Green massacre, of course, the liberal media eating her alive for it, which I think is pretty unfair, considering there were terrorists, there were weapons, there were bombs, there were all of these things. It was thwarted. You're lucky there wasn't a Bowling Green massacre, but they want to make it some sort of a joke, some sort of a laughing matter. I don't find terrorism to be that funny.
I don't either. I think you're exactly correct.
So anyhow, but I think that maybe they should look for somebody different. And I'm still on the over-under here. Are you a gambling man, Professor?
No, not at all.
Well, gamble with me on this one anyway. The over-under on Sean Spicer, does he make it 6 months, more or less?
That's a good question. He's good, but he's a little bit too, pugnacious.
Yeah, he's too quick to anger.
Right.
Just let it roll, buddy. You got to let it roll. I think Laura Ingraham would be better, because Laura Ingraham would toy with him.
She would be superb, but I don't think she's going to trade her wonderful job that she has right now, or jobs, for something like that.
Oh, I don't know. You do that for a couple of years, and your job, you're gold. You know that.
That may be true, but she's good. There's no question about that. She's excellent.
All right, what about Mitch McConnell? He's saying he's trying to step back a little bit from some of these issues raised by the president. He's skeptical on the travel ban. He's skeptical on the relationship, or the developing relationship, with Vladimir Putin. Mitch McConnell, because the story is that Mitch McConnell on Sunday nights all through the campaign, Donald Trump would sneak away on Sunday evenings and have a phone conversation with Mitch McConnell. That went on for weeks, ever since the NRA get-together in the spring of 2016. They talked all the time, but now a little bit strained again. What do you make of it?
I've never been, my own personal thing, I've never been a great fan of Senator McConnell. He just doesn't seem to have the
charisma
to be majority leader at this particular time, or even minority leader some years ago. He just comes across fairly weak, doesn't have the presence that I think is necessary to be Senate Majority Leader at this time.
Makes me wonder, too. I've often thought the same thing. But you know what? He's not as bad as Harry Reid. I can give him that.
Oh, that is correct. He's not as bad as but Charles Schumer is, and he.
So how is it? You raise a great point, Professor, that we've talked about on this program for years. How is it the Democrats find somebody who is a lightning rod, who will crack the whip and get out there in front of the camera and drive the agenda? And the Republicans kind of have this milquetoast people they push out there that look like they should never be in front of a camera, have no charisma, have no spunk.
It would be the opposite. This morning I hear that Senator Ed Markey, a senator from Massachusetts, has said in no way are we going to allow the Republicans to have the so-called nuclear option. Now, they're the minority party, and yet Senator Markey of Massachusetts says in no way are we going to allow that. That shows you the power of the Democratic Party.
Well, then I guess Senator Markey ought to stand up and vote for Neil Gorsuch, because that way you don't need the nuclear option. But I'll guarantee you this. If it comes around, the Republicans can use it or not. But if they don't, the Democrats will the first chance they need it. That's a fact.
Exactly.
You can carve that one in stone because Harry Reid began that process, and now it's carved in stone. And
that's where strong leadership, which I don't believe Mitch McConnell has, comes into play. The Democrats, they're just growling and angry all the time, and they make it work.
Well, yeah, they're the victims, no matter whether they're in the majority or not. They're victims. Everybody's a victim. Everybody needs help. Everybody needs the government. And what's crazy about these protesters you see all over the country complaining about the government and at the same time demanding more government? It's the most foolish, disingenuous thing I've ever seen in my life. Are these people that obtuse?
And my students, by the way, articulate that so well.
Oh, come on. They don't articulate it well at all. They I feel sorry for your students. If you put somebody like Milton Friedman in front of them, their heads would explode.
Well, they would know what he's talking about.
Yeah, he'd talk about logic.
They don't like libertarians, and they can't stand conservatives. And by the way, just as an offshoot, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in New York City, and she said the hatred of Donald Trump and the Republicans in New York City is just palpable. She says you never want to drive around New York City with anything that says Republican or Donald Trump, or your car and your life could be in danger.
Yeah, well, I
only
do.
Half kidding.
Yeah, I want, because Republicans want to talk about Plato, the philosopher, while Democrats are playing with Plato, the molding clay. And that's really the difference between what we have here today is you've got people who want to talk about logic and common sense and fixing a problem, while the others are trying to find a safe space to hide themselves. I'll give you 15 seconds for the last word.
No, that's exactly it. I'm still going to try to find out today how the federal courts allow that district judge in Washington to get away with making a ruling for the whole country. It just baffles me, and it's really very scary.
Well, give us an answer for next week.
Protocol is going to be just thrown out the window.
Yeah, we're going to want an answer for next week. Professor, always a pleasure. Enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
There you have it, Allan Saxe, Professor of Political Science at the University of Texas, Arlington, here on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome to it. The Super Bowl. By the way, Lady Gaga did not go political. If you didn't watch it, Lady Gaga did not go to political, and that was a very good thing for the National Football League. If Lady Gaga had gone, she was an open supporter of Hillary Clinton, an outspoken critic of Donald Trump. She did not go there. She sang her songs. She put some innuendo out there, I suppose, but she did not go political, not blatantly political, and that's the best thing. By the way, coming into the Super Bowl, teams with at least a 17-point lead after the third quarter were 133-0 all time. Yeah, 133-0 all time. So, a 19-point lead going into the fourth quarter dissolved because then Tom Brady happened. There's nothing like it. Nothing at all. It was absolutely incredible, to say the least. Absolutely incredible. All right, so let's get on with the rest of the world. And Donald Trump, besides Tom Brady and all that happiness, Donald Trump has spent his Super Bowl, of course, spent some time with Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly, the last few years, has spoken to Barack Obama. It's a tradition, I suppose, that's been going on for several years now, that on Super Bowl Sunday, the President of the United States sits down with a correspondent from whichever network is hosting the Super Bowl. In this case, it's Fox, and O'Reilly always gets the nod. And one of the questions asked was, would you ever pinch yourself, I suppose, and realize you're the leader of the free world, clip G? Do you ever just sit there and go, my God, I'm the President of the United States, clip G, Donald Trump with Bill O'Reilly, go.
You get 4 hours of sleep or some crazy thing like that. When your head hits the pillow, you ever say to yourself, I can't believe I'm here. I cannot believe that I am the President of the United States. When I wasn't a politician, I didn't start out this way. That wasn't my life goal. Does that ever come into your mind?
Well, I must tell you, the other day I walked into the main entrance of the White House, and I said to myself, this is sort of amazing. Or you walk into Air Force One. It's like a surreal experience in a certain way, but you have to get over it because there's so much work to be done, whether it's jobs or other nations that truly hate us. You have to get over it.
You have to move along, yeah. I'm sure it is. It's got to be awe-inspiring from time to time, no matter, what's going on. Let's see here. During that same interview, he talked about his plans for a tax cut and his timetable for replacing Obamacare, which could take about a year, from what I understand. Clip F. During the same interview, here's President Trump talking about Obamacare and what happens next. Go.
2017, can Americans expect a tax cut?
I think so, yes, and I think before the end of the year, I would like to say yes.
Okay. Can Americans in 2017 expect a new health care plan rolled out by the Trump administration this year?
Yeah, in the process, and maybe it'll take till sometime into next year, but we are certainly going to be in the process. Very complicated. Obamacare is a disaster. You have to remember, Obamacare doesn't work. So we are putting in a wonderful plan. It's statutorily takes a while to get. We're going to be putting it in fairly soon. I think that, yes, I would like to say by the end of the year, at least the rudiments, but we should have something within the year and the following year.
And he spent a fair amount of time with Bill O'Reilly talking about the travel ban, which is now the top topic, has been for a week now, because a federal judge in Washington, we were just talking about this federal district judge in Washington, has ruled for the entire country by putting a temporary restraining order in place, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But he spent a fair amount of time talking about that. It's clip A. Donald Trump talking to Bill O'Reilly about the most controversial decision so far in his young administration. Here it is.
I think it was very smooth. You had 109 people out of hundreds of thousands of travelers, and all we did was vet those people very, very carefully.
You wouldn't do anything differently if you had to do it over again?
Look, in life,
some of your people didn't really know what the order was.
Well, that's not what General Kelly said. General Kelly, who's now Secretary Kelly, he said he totally knew, he was aware of it, and it was very smooth. It was 109 people.
Let's talk about Iran. Your assessment, do you think we're on a collision course, we being the United States, with that country?
I think it was the worst deal I've ever seen negotiated. I think it was a deal that should have never been negotiated. Absolutely, the deal that was made by the Obama administration. I think it's a shame that we've had a deal like that and that we had to sign a deal like that, and there was no reason to do it. And if you're going to do it, have a good deal. We gave them $1.7 billion in cash, which is unheard of. And we put the money up, and we have really nothing to show for it.
Possibly you tear it up?
We'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to see what happens. I can say this. They have total disregard for our country. They are the #1 terrorist state. And they're sending money all over the place and weapons, and can't do that.
Sanctions. That's how you're going to start with them.
Just started.
But you're moving a carrier, right?
I never talk about military moves. I always criticize President Obama where they'd have an announcement that they're going into Mosul or they're going to someplace, and they give the name, the date, the time. I don't believe in that.
So you're not real bullish on Iran at this point?
No, I'm not bullish. I think they have total disrespect for our country. And I understand that deal, I would have lived with it if they said, okay, we're all together now. But it was just the opposite. It's like they're emboldened. Where they follow our planes, they circle our ships with their little boats, and they lost respect because they can't believe anybody could be so stupid as to make a deal like that.
So there it is. That's Donald Trump talking to Bill O'Reilly. Again, it's the tradition that's been going on for several years now. Whichever network is broadcasting the Super Bowl, one correspondent gets a chance to sit down with the president for a one-on-one interview. Of course, for the last few years, that's been Bill O'Reilly with Barack Obama, which was far more entertaining, for the record. But Donald Trump sitting down and talking about a variety of issues with O'Reilly. Now, I've got the United States District Court, Western District of Washington. I've got the brief in my hand. And this brief, what's interesting about this brief, it's only 6 pages. So the question asked earlier today is, how can a federal district judge in Washington write an order, a temporary restraining order? This is James Robart. He's the United States District Judge there. How can he write an order that affects the entire nation? And so that's probably going to end up at the United States Supreme Court. It will go to the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals first, but that is the most liberal court in America, a court that is based in California. It rules for California, Washington, Oregon, parts of Wyoming, Montana, and Alaska. But it is the most liberal court in America, so don't expect anything to change there. Expect it to go to the Supreme Court, but that could take some period of time. It's 14 after on a Monday. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show. Welcome aboard.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
Every day I get the cue.
18 after on this Monday. This part of the program brought to you by DTE Energy, providing safe, reliable natural gas to businesses across Michigan. DTE Energy. Know your own power. All right, my next guest, Kathy Hoekstra, is here from the Washington Examiner, and she says, while everybody's paying attention to the arguments over travel bans and Obamacare and everything else, President Trump has, meanwhile, done some things that have completely changed the landscape in America, especially when it comes to regulations. Kathy, welcome back to the program.
Oh, hi, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure to have you here. So you say this is one of the biggest changes in political power in Washington in years and years with the reduction of these regulations. Do tell.
Well, think about it. I mean, especially under the Obama administration, the way he has been using the executive order. He has been, and this goes back to many different presidencies, don't get me wrong on this, but giving unfettered power to bureaucracies, to agencies such as the Food and Drug Administration. We all know about the Environmental Protection Agency, Just a Clean Power Plan to anybody, Department of Labor, etc. And what they're doing is carrying out the will of the Obama administration and putting in rules that not only just cost businesses and industries so much money, but all that trickles down to you and me, taxpayers, consumers. And it's all in the it's all for special interests. It's all for big labor. It's all to benefit the environmentalist crowd. It's all,
And if I'm not mistaken, Kathy, last year I read, just last year alone, there were nearly 4,000 regulations put into place. Now, remember, these are put into place, rules and regulations put in by unelected officials in these bureaucracies, 4,000 of them, give or take, 97,000 new pages of rules and regulations. How in the world would anybody keep up with such things?
Wait, that's pretty much the brunt of it. You can't keep up with it, and that's why it's so great to see President Trump just coming right in again with this swipe of a pen. He's taking care of some of these. Some of these he can. Some of them, which I'm very, very glad to see, Congress actually starting to use the tools they have at hand. And they're taking care of things congressionally. They're kind of, to put in football terms, we might as well, picking up the ball and running with it. So the regulatory regime, what I like to call the fourth branch of government anymore, it used to be called the media. I don't think so.
It's the regulatory branch of government. And that you're right about that, but it was never something you can find in the Constitution. And here's what concerns me about these agencies, whether it's the EPA or the FDA or whichever one it is. Like I said, they come in, they create their rules, they create their guidelines, but they also create the penalties. So they create the rules, which in effect are laws, and then they enforce the laws, which can take your liberty, your property, your money. They can take everything if you don't follow these laws. And they're not anything that was ever put through by our elected officials, and that concerns me. Whether it's the EPA or the FDA, it doesn't matter. They're coming like the Clean Waters of America Act, which would have regulated right down to the mud puddles on my small farm here in Michigan. The mud puddles, the runoff from my streams, would have been regulated by the EPA. Those things are beginning to be rolled back, and the cost to Americans, because of the cost of small business and so forth, in excess of $100 billion the last time I checked. I guess it's probably actually more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is more. I think the folks at Competitive Enterprise Institute pegged regulatory costs, upwards of $1 trillion, something very close to that per year on businesses and industry. And you're absolutely right. That's what it is. It's an end around Congress. And that's not what the Constitution intended. So the piece I wrote for the Examiner was intended to say just that. You know what? If there were to be a fourth branch of government, we'd see it in the Constitution. It's not there. And what we're seeing right now, well, everybody's paying attention to tweets and travel bans and all these other things. What's happening is a huge scaling back on that fourth branch of government, and that's exactly what we need. The office of the president needs to be right-sized down to what it was intended to be in the Constitution, and that's what President Trump is doing with the help of Congress. Now,
I did some more reading here. Kathy Hoekstra here from the Washington Examiner talking about her new article focusing on the reduction of regulations in our nation. But I read that this has been done before in places like Britain, the idea that you get rid of 2 regulations for each one that you want to implement, and within a short period of time, you can pare these regulations down by 30, 40, 50% potentially, which would be a huge money-saving opportunity for the 90% of the small businesses that create 90% of the jobs in America. This is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And, the executive order was for every rule that an agency wants to implement from here on out is that the agency has to identify 2 existing rules to repeal and get rid of. And that is a big deal. And a lot of, critics on the other side say, oh, well, they can just wipe out rules that are going to poison our water and things like that. That is absolute nonsense. It's going to be done. The agency itself has to pick out which rules they want to get rid of and erase from the Federal Register. And this is going to be a big deal. And in Britain, that's true. Actually, Britain has one new rule, 3 rules off the books. And that has, I think, from a span of 2001 to 2005 or something in the early aughts, saved businesses equivalent of like $10 billion alone.
Right, and Britain's a much smaller regulatory state. The last thing I want to focus on just for 30 seconds here, though, Ajit Pai from the FCC has done something. He's a conservative now in charge of the FCC. He said, we're going to make it open to everybody. Any rule changes are going to be out there for at least 3 weeks. The public can see them. I think it's a brilliant move. I haven't seen a move like this from a government agency ever that I recall, but the conservative Ajit Pai saying, listen, if the FCC is going to make changes, everybody's going to know about it. I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word.
I think every single agency needs to follow suit, and we may. We're going to have Scott Pruitt in the EPA. We're going to see a new leader in the Food and Drug Administration. I think they should all follow suit. I think it's brilliant. It shouldn't be done in the secret dark of night, as it has been in the past.
All right. Kathy Hoekstra, always a pleasure. How can they find you?
Watchdogs.org is the full-time place you can find me.
There it is, Kathy Hoekstra. Always a pleasure, my dear. We'll talk soon.
You bet. Thanks, Steve.
25 after on the Steve Gruber Show. It's Monday. We'll be right back.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
33 after on a Monday. The hotline number here, 888-900-9966. Encourage you to join the conversation whenever the idea takes you. Ron calling in from Virginia today. Ron, welcome to the program.
Good morning. I'll be real quick here. The best way to get rid of all these excessive regulations and rules and such is just to get rid of the organization that's generating them. We don't need a federal EPA and Department of Education anymore, so you can just get rid of them. But otherwise, all the politicians will do is they'll take the old ones that they're going to get rid of and build them into the new one. And that way we end up with bills that are hundreds and thousands of pages long that we need to sign before we can find out what's in them.
Well, we need to sort through those things, Ron, and make sure. I think it's one issue, one vote. I think that's the way it should be. But people on Capitol Hill say if you approach it that way, you'd never get anything done. But thanks for checking in. Thanks for listening in the great state of Virginia. I appreciate the support. My next guest is Paul Brandus, White House correspondent for West Wing Report, which has TV and radio clients on 4 continents. The biggest Twitter following of the entire White House press corps. Pretty impressive. Also an author, writes for USA Today and speaker of presidential libraries, including the Gerald Ford Presidential Library, where he will be next week in Grand Rapids. So if you want to see Paul, that's where you can go. Paul Brandus, welcome to the program.
How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. Yourself?
I'm pretty good, thanks.
So let's talk about Donald Trump in his first 2 weeks. I've never seen, a guy who has been attacked so vociferously in just 2 weeks' time. But some of it he brings on himself. Some of it, is brought on by the agenda of the opposition party, if you will. But where are we right now in your estimation?
Well, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, the opposition party is always on the offensive. It's like that for whoever's in the White House. The other party's always attacking. But some of these problems that the president has are clearly self-inflicted with some of these tweets that he makes that probably aren't the wisest thing for him to do. So it's sort of a mix of reasons. So I think that's fair. But I just tweeted, and I do this every week. I I think it's fair to put things in a broader context, and by that I mean I kind of look at how the president is doing in the polls compared to every other president, going all the way back to Harry Truman in 1945. Now, they didn't poll as much back then. I mean, these days you've got polls up the wazoo.
Well, the polls for Harry Truman's election are about as accurate as those for Donald Trump. I can say that. The polling was about as accurate.
Well, I'm not talking about a national election. I'm talking about just weekly polling.
Sure.
And what the polling shows now is that I'm just the messenger here, so don't blame me. I'm just telling you what the data shows.
No, I understand.
Is that compared to every president going back to 1945, the president, at least for now, is well below all other of his 12 predecessors. He right now is, I think, at about 45.8, but that's actually up about a point from last week. So all of these...
And pretty predictable. Let's be honest, Paul.
All these naysayers who are complaining about him, he's actually up about a point in the last week, so I think he's actually holding his ground pretty well.
And in the Rasmussen polls, he's above 50%, has been as high as 59%. And I bring that up only because the Rasmussen poll was one of only 2 that were accurate going into Election Day about who was going to win the election. So people say, well, you can't listen to the Rasmussen poll. Well, I can, because when he says the president's over 50% approval rating, and it was one of 2 polls that predicted he would win on Election Day, I think that has value. Now, having said that, 62.5 million Americans voted for Donald Trump on the 8th of November. Here in Michigan, we have the narrowest margin at about 10,700 votes for the victory. I believe, because of the constant attacks, the way that the left keeps going after it, chipping every little thing, every little nitpicking everything, attacking him on everything, going after him on everything. I believe if the election were held today, that in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and the core of the Rust Belt states, Donald Trump would win by a wider margin, because I think the people that voted for him don't think he's going to get a fair shake. I think there's enough people out there saying, you know what? He's done more in a couple of weeks in trying to change things and work than we've seen in a long time, and I think he would actually win by a wider margin. What do you think?
Well, it's really hard to say. I mean, I'm not sure the data exists to say that, but that's certainly a very interesting theory. I'll also say that you got to be careful about perhaps conflating activity with achievement. I mean, a lot of these executive orders are very interesting. They're things I think have to be done. There's no question that one of the most important things that any president can do, Steve, is to secure the borders, protect the American people, safeguard the sovereignty of this country. So I think the president is on despite what these courts have said over the past couple of days, I think he's actually on a firm legal ground in doing what he's doing with these executive orders on the the Muslim travel.
I think there's little question about that.
Hang on a second. I think he's on good, solid ground here. I think his problem here is that he's not doing a good enough job of explaining his position. You got to be able to sell your message, and on that standpoint, he's on firm legal ground policy-wise, but the president and the people around him have got to do a better job from the communications standpoint. I think that's one of the issues that is hurting him here. But the issue, legally, policy-wise, on firm ground, but from a communication standpoint, I think there's some room for improvement.
I think that's been the problem with the Republicans for a long time compared to the Democratic counterparts. It seems that Harry Reid and Charlie Schumer have a way of getting their message out, and they're clear, they don't waver, they're on point. You've got the Republicans who don't seem to be as clear on message oftentimes, and the same is true from this White House. And it makes me wonder, can they not find somebody on Madison Avenue that can get a good PR firm for the Republicans? How are they so inept at this sometimes at messaging? When you say the legal standing is right and the message may work and resonate well, but it doesn't get delivered very well. Why?
Well, you've got to be able to sell your message. I mean, if you can't, he did lose the popular vote. So if you've got to
but that, hold on. No, stop. I'm tired of hearing about the, Paul, honestly. I'm tired of hearing about the popular vote.
Question. The president says, can you hear me? You're breaking up.
No, I'm tired of hearing about the popular vote. You take California out of the mix, where he lost the popular vote by 4.2 million. It means nothing.
Well, hang on. You asked for my opinion, and I'm giving it to you. The fact is that the president, you've got to be able to sell your message. And the president right now, with these early morning tweets and everything, he's got to be more disciplined about the message to the people around him. There's infighting in the White House and backstabbing and this and that. They've got to have a more cohesive messaging unit and get their act together. I mean, right now, the president has this sort of wheel and spoke kind of communication system where everyone is equal. Over the weekend, they changed that, where Reince Priebus, the new chief of staff, is actually now rolling out today or yesterday kind of a 10-point plan that is going to be attached to every kind of communication that comes out of the White House, in theory. But the president still has got to be more disciplined about these, tweets and shooting off at the hip and everything. That is the thing that is hurting him, and I'm not sure that the chief of staff can really rein in his boss that way. So I think that's one of the big problems that they've got to overcome.
Paul, the first thing I would do today is I would say, Kellyanne, you've been terrific. You need to take a vacation. That'd be the first thing I did. I put Omarosa in her place because she stands out there, looks great, is on message every single time. Kellyanne has made a couple of rookie mistakes that were easily avoidable. Paul, I got to leave it there for today. Great conversation. Look forward to having you back sometime soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Paul Brandus, White House correspondent for the West Wing Report. You can find him online, 41 after on a Monday here on The Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
Monday on The Steve Gruber Show. Glad to have you along for the ride. Find out more at stevegruber.com, where you can listen live, check out the podcast, and look at the things we write. Follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. My next guest, Aaron Berndt. He is an indoor radon specialist for the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and we have folks like Aaron along because we want to make sure you're good and healthy, because we want you listening for years to come. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Steve, for having me.
Glad to have you here. Aaron's actually in studio. We only allow very special guests into the studio. We're usually very secretive about this, Aaron. But anyhow, people hear about radon. They hear the word, but I mean, I don't think it makes the top 10 for what people think about. They go home, they're running the kids around. I don't think people think about radon very often. Why should they?
Well, because it's a Class A carcinogen. And it's known to cause cancer, lung cancer specifically. And it is easy to ignore a little bit because it's a colorless, odorless, tasteless radioactive gas. The body can't sense it. So.
Out of sight, out of mind. People don't see it. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, it is one of the leading causes of lung cancer, as you say, if not, it might be number 2.
Yeah, it's the second leading cause of lung cancer next to smoking. EPA estimates about 21,000 deaths each year. are contributed to by radon, and about 600 of those in the state of Michigan.
So, I mean, obviously that's a very serious concern. It's naturally occurring in the soil in some places, correct? I mean, it doesn't.
It is naturally occurring in the soil. It really comes from uranium. Uranium's naturally present in the soil and rock. Uranium breaks down or decays into radium, and then radium breaks down into radon gas, and in gas form, it can enter the home through cracks and voids in the foundation, and there it can build up over time to unsafe levels, and that's where our concern is.
Now, is there a safe level of radon that's out there? I mean, is there a level you should be above or below? Or?
There really is no safe level of radon. Even small amounts of radon carries a little risk. EPA states they have an action level of 4. At 4 and above, they encourage you to fix your home. And they even say from 2 to 4 to think about it. And in Michigan, 2 picocuries per liter. 2 is relatively easy to achieve with a mitigation system and fixing your home.
So when you look around Michigan, obviously it wouldn't just be homes, it'd be businesses as well, because any place, if it's in the soil, any building could trap this gas and hold it, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, so let me ask you this. When you look around Michigan, then how many homes, I've got an old farmhouse, I don't know if it's ever been checked for radon, I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to guess probably not. How many houses in Michigan, in your guess, Aaron, would have a concern that's above 2 or 4 or worse?
Well, we've collected over 160,000 data points since the early to mid-90s. And what that shows is 26% of the test results in the state of Michigan come back elevated. That's 1 in 4 homes, and that's a concern.
Really? 1 in 4?
Yes.
And so this is a disease a gas that could cause a disease, being lung cancer, other illnesses potentially, because it's radioactivity, right?
Well, the only known health effect from radon is lung cancer. There's no short-term side effects. And it's an inhalation hazard. It's not a known ingestion hazard at this point.
But specifically, I mean, it has a specific concern, a specific danger. I mean, lung cancer, obviously a specific danger. And I would wonder, I guess, you talk about young kids and secondhand smoke. Would younger people and older people be more susceptible like they would to other lung diseases?
Well, they could. What really matters is the level of radon in the home and the time that they're exposed to it. It's really no different than too much radiation from the sun can lead to skin cancer. Too much exposure to radon gas can lead to lung cancer.
All right, we're here with Aaron Berndt. He is from the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, talking about radon. He's an indoor radon specialist. Things that we talk about from time to time to make sure you and your family are safe. So let's talk about how we make the family safe. How do we do that, Aaron? How do we make sure that the home isn't too high on radon? Is it an expensive process? What do we need to do?
Well, it can be relatively inexpensive. We distribute short-term test kits to local health departments, but you can get test kits from hardware stores and big box stores. Usually from those stores, a test kit costs from $20 to $30. From the health department, usually you can get a test kit for under $15. You test your home for 3 to 7 days, send your test kit in, and then the company can contact you with the results. If you don't want to test your home yourself, you can hire a home inspector to come in with a continuous radon monitor and test your home. And usually the cost for that is around $100 to $200.
So most homes, if you've bought your house in the last few years, radon test is pretty standard. But for somebody like me, house has been in the family for 50 years, probably hasn't been tested.
That's correct. And more people are becoming aware of radon, and they're testing in the real estate transaction.
Right. As part of I've done enough real estate to know that it's part of of what you go through.
Right. It's not required, but people are choosing to test for radon in the inspection itself.
And how important do you think it is? I mean, obviously you do this every day. How important do you think testing for radon is?
I think it's very important. I mean, lung cancer is serious. I've tested my own home. The people I work with test their home. They understand and we're a non-regulatory program.
Sure.
So we want people to make an informed decision that directly affects their health.
Do you find that if a home has radon here, that you'll find maybe a subdivision or a cluster of homes will have an area where it's higher than maybe other areas? Do they cluster together?
It could, but it can be relatively, one home can have an issue and the neighbors right next door may not. It can be fairly localized too. So that's why we encourage everyone to test. we do have elevated levels in every one of our counties in the state of Michigan. So
every county, all 83.
Every county. Some counties have a higher potential, but we do have elevated levels in every county.
All right, and there you have it. Aaron Berndt here from the DEQ. The DEQ radon hotline, by the way, is 1-800-RADON-GAS. 1-800-RADON-GAS. And I guess I'll give you the last word. 10 seconds, your last thought on radon here today.
I just the priority for our program is to raise awareness and get people to test their home and make an informed decision that directly affects their health. If you have any questions, give us a call at 1-800-RADON-GAS or email me at radon@michigan.gov, and we'll try to help you out wherever we can.
That's radon@michigan.gov or 1-800-RADON-GAS. Something to consider, and your family's health and well-being, always something worth considering. Aaron, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on the show, Steve.
Aaron Berndt from the DEQ here on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it.
Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, it's not often we talk sports for an extended period of time or mention it more than once, but good Lord, did you watch the game? If you went to bed early, you missed the greatest comeback in football history that I think I've ever seen. Down by 25 points halfway through the third quarter, Tom Brady and the Patriots rally to win the Super Bowl. Is he the best quarterback to ever play in the NFL? He's won it 5 times. The Super Bowl, that is. He's been the MVP 4 times. Kind of hard to argue with. The way Tom Brady finally was able to step up and take over that game, 466 yards, 2 touchdowns, and stunning the Atlanta Falcons 34-28 in overtime. When the Patriots won the toss, you just knew it was about to happen. The Patriots scored 19 points in the fourth quarter, including 2 two-point conversions. Can you imagine? 2 two-point conversions. And then went right down the field in the first overtime period, smacked it home, finished 17-2. I think the Falcons finished 13-6. They were on a roll. Matt Ryan had a great 2.5 quarters, and then it just fizzled. Tom Brady, the new Lord of the Rings. Alex gave me that. I'm going to go ahead and credit Alex. Nice work down there. Tom Brady, the Lord of the Rings. All right, now, concerning the commercials, I thought there was one really great commercial last night. It came from Ford Motor Company. Nobody likes to be stuck, and it showed like the kid upside down on his big wheel with his helmet stuck, and the kid that couldn't get the shirt over his head, and the guy sitting on the chairlift at the ski resort all by himself. Guy out there with the car broke down, and the Jeep just drives by. He's like, hey! We've all been there. I thought that was a brilliant commercial. The rest of them, I don't know so much. I guess I'm kind of tired of the whole 84 Lumber, Coca-Cola, politically correct, PC agenda commercials. I've had all those I can take. Apparently, they believe that everybody deserves to be here. Everybody deserves to be in America, and if you don't feel that way, then you're a bigot or something, I suppose, and they try to make you feel guilty and beat you down for having a different opinion. So the question is that true? Is that true to you? Does everybody deserve to be an American? Because that's kind of the narrative anymore from the left. We shouldn't have a border wall. We shouldn't be able to control who comes to our country, even from nations that have no control over their own immigration, like the 7 nations that Donald Trump wrote the temporary ban for, that's on hold right now from a temporary restraining order. We'll see where that goes. But we are a nation of immigrants. That's true. European and Irish and African and Chinese, people from all ends of the earth. But does that mean ours is a door that should always be open, never be locked, never be guarded? Is ours a nation that because we were born of immigrants, we're required to take anyone and everyone at any time that comes down the pike? That's the question before you. It seems to me, and at the risk of being called a nativist, which I am, and I'm okay with that, by the way, we should be prudent and careful about who comes here, what their intentions are. It seems to me that in a world more dangerous than it was just a couple of decades ago, that we should be even more diligent about who gets the keys to enter the America I've been part of building for the last 50 years. And so have you. I've contributed sweat and hard work and tax dollars. So have you. If people want to come here and change the fabric that is America, why should we accept that? And the answer is we shouldn't. This is a nation like all nations with traditions and cultures that must be respected. If you're coming here with the intention of changing whatever you can under the cover of you're racist and bigoted if you don't take everyone from anywhere all the time, that is complete nonsense, and of course you know that. If you're not coming here to assimilate, why are you coming here at all? Why is it that we don't hear the people that come here from East Pakistan, India, and Burma screaming they're not being treated right? Why is the enrollment of Asian students higher than those of African-American students and Latinos at almost every prestigious American university and college? Why don't we see those immigrants marching in the streets and screaming they're victims? It seems to me that the most common protester I recognize in the streets screaming about being victims and unfair treatment and demanding justice are white kids from the suburbs and privileged backgrounds that were probably coddled way too much by mommy and daddy. So here's my solution. Every kid complaining about capitalism and its evil corporations should immediately give up all of their iPhones, Androids, laptops, drones, and anything else connected electronically with their devices to the American dream. Every person stricken with white privilege syndrome while living in the lily white suburbs should immediately give up their home to a person of color in need that has been a victim and victimized just by living in America. Every person convinced that man is behind the idea of global warming should immediately give way and give away every vehicle that has an internal combustion engine, remove every product derived from petroleum products, which includes, but not limited to, pretty much every plastic product in your world, nearly all clothing products, fire retardant products, medicine, paint, makeup, and 10,000 other items I could name in an hour. Every person that thinks America is too rich, too powerful, and too arrogant should immediately put their name and address on the internet and offer to trade places with someone in a third world nation so they can be honest about their motivations. Point is this, I'm tired of people running this country down, and more importantly, running down people that are their neighbors and attacking them because they voted for somebody else and have a different opinion of where America should be going. I personally am all in for America. How about you? On the hotline, there's Jennifer standing by. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Jiminy Cricket, you're my hero.
Good for
Everything
me.
you said is true. You're spot on. You know, with great pride, I found my father's naturalization papers the other day. I found a little card with his picture on it, and I found other documentation, and I'm so proud because when he came to the United States from Poland, he came here legally. He obeyed all the rules and all the regulations. He was interned at Ellis Island for a while because they check the background and everything. And let me tell you something. The people that are coming to the United States are treated like royalty compared to what the other people centuries ago or a long time ago were treated like when they went to Ellis Island. They were treated like dogs then. So get off it. You have no right to come here unless you come here wanting to adopt the customs, the language, everything of this country. You did not come here to turn this country into what you left. Thank you for the opportunity to say that. I've been dying to spit it out.
Jennifer,
Bye-bye.
Great conversation as always. It's 14 after on a Monday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Genuine Michigan common sense, on display every day.
All right, so here it is. I put it out there. I'm guessing I wasn't the only one. Hashtag never Starbucks. I put it out there after Howard Schultz, the CEO, politically active CEO, Howard Schultz, who has previously said, he wants no firearms, he's anti-Trump, so on and so forth. And then he said he's gonna hire 10,000 refugees while we have 500,000 unemployed veterans in America. He also hires some veterans, but another company, Black Rifle Coffee Company, started and run by a veteran, says they'll hire 10,000 vets before they hire refugees. Tom Borelli here, contributor to Conservative Review, and much more. Tom, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Steve. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you, my friend. So Howard Schultz, he's politically active there at Starbucks, but I'm going to tell you, I saw social media posts over the weekend where places like Caribou Coffee and other companies had long lines, and Starbucks across the street was empty. Does it have an impact?
Steve, in the past, I don't think it would have, but these days, America is so polarized over issues that everyday Americans are willing to use their pocketbooks and their wallets to support the values that they believe as Americans. And, what Mr. Schultz did, he wrote a letter to his employees that not only addressed refugees, he expressed his support for the Deferred Action for Children Arrivals, the DACA program. He mentioned he was going to hire the refugees. He says that he doesn't like building bridges. He wants to build bridges, not walls, with Mexico. And he wants to make sure that his employees have health care, eligible ones if appropriate, which is a shot at, obviously, Obamacare. So he's all in. He's an all-in progressive. And a CEO, especially a CEO who's trying to sell a consumer product, something that people purchase every day, should not mix politics with business. It's just a horrible decision.
Well, and he does it all the time. Like you said, you just gave a laundry list of the things that Howard Schultz has done. But in this day and age, you're right, you have to be careful. And I wonder, if his drive to hire refugees, as he calls them, this is part of a bigger problem, a bigger symptom, if you will. Refugees come here and they get a package of benefits, fair to say. And meanwhile, like I said, there's 500,000 American veterans that are employed, 50,000 that are homeless today by the last estimates, and a whole host of other problems in this country with, single moms and women in battered women's shelters and so forth that probably could use a bit of a hand, that could use some help out there. You've got all sorts of problems in this country that could be addressed first. And that's not downplaying the plight of refugees. I can appreciate and empathize with that. But shouldn't our concern and our empathy start at home first?
Well, Steve, you're being very logical here.
We'll have none of that.
Morning. Obviously, you're not a progressive and live in the state of Washington where Schultz does. One of the big problems we're facing today is a lot of these CEOs are just plain out progressive. They view the world through the progressive lens, and they can't even separate their business from politics because they're so emotionally involved. You listed a number of issues that should take certain priority and precedent. And, some businesses are a little bit smart about that. I think J.P. Morgan Chase, the bank, had a program, to hire veterans. A lot of people understand the pulse of America and are willing to, try to, increase shareholder value by connecting into those feelings. But you have a group of CEOs, and unfortunately Schultz isn't one of them. You have a lot of Silicon Valley CEOs who I think today are either planning or going to be suing the government because of Trump's Syrian refugee ban and that issue. So there are a number of CEOs.
I want to talk about that real quickly because, you've got this judge in Washington. I've got the decision right here. I've got the brief, I should say, from the TRO brief from Judge Robart, excuse me. And it's a 6-page, decision. I've seen decisions in my life. It's about as short as it gets. It's got very little supporting case law. It's got this thing is thin to say the least. The judge from Boston had a 21-page opinion upholding Donald Trump's travel ban, temporary as it were. But as a result of all of this, Donald Trump gets extreme vetting all the time. Maybe that's all he really wanted.
Yeah, when you're talking about Trump, he really is the disruptor. One really great thing about President Trump, he's smoking out all the bad actors, in America, from CEOs like Schultz to the crazy activists to the progressive judges. I bet you a lot of Americans had no idea that the progressive element was so deep-seated in America. But Trump's policies, he's really exposing all these individuals for who they are and what needs really to be fixed.
So, and I look at these, and I wonder, and I've talked about this, Tom, a bit here in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, the path by which Donald Trump won the White House. And I look at the conversations that are going on and the things that I hear people saying, and I actually believe that if the election were held today, that he would win by wider margins in those 3 states than he did on the 8th of November.
Oh, absolutely. And look what he's done for jobs, especially jobs in the Midwestern states. The states that really got Trump over the winning line there. Absolutely. And you see a number of CEOs, other CEOs, however, are recognizing where Trump is heading, and they want to be part of it for the good of the country and for their shareholders. Good business is good politics. They can do it, but just some of them just can't connect. And I think Trump is going to keep just rolling that train, and a lot of people are going to be joining on, and some people will be falling off. But, hey, it's America. It's all about choice.
The continuing attacks from the media, I also think, are actually to his benefit. As average consumers see, all the networks piling on, and they're like, good Lord, give the guy, he's been there 2 weeks. He hasn't united the country. Yeah, in 2 weeks. Gosh, can you think of that? Anyhow, Tom, I'll give you 20 seconds for the last word.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really deep-seated infrastructure, I would say, that's really against President Trump, but I think it's going to work to their detriment and to the benefit of the key Midwestern states, which really can remake the whole electoral college map going forward.
No question. I actually think that going forward, Michigan could end up being that bellwether state because of how close it was here, 10,000 votes. So there you go. Tom Borelli, contributor to Conservative Review, TV commentator, all-around good guy, and a regular contributor on the Steve Gruber Show as well. Tom, as always, thank you.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
It's 33 after on a Monday. Sorting through all of it for you and trying to keep on top of it for you. It's the Steve Gruber Show. If you'd like to join the conversation, it's 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966, the hotline number. Check us out at stevegruber.com, plus Facebook, and follow us on Twitter as well. My next guest, Steve Milloy, author of Scare Pollution, Why and How to Fix the EPA. He is also the founder of junkscience.com. Steve, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve.
Glad to have you here. As a guy who owns a small hobby farm, the Waters of America deal was something that had me greatly concerned, wondering if my small pond and the little, runoff and maybe even the mud puddles in my driveway were going to be regulated. I mean, these are the things, seriously. And not that long ago, I had a regulation come down from the ag department saying that all farm animals, including the half a dozen chickens I had in my yard, were somehow going to be regulated by the government. Good Lord.
Well, 40 years ago, 45 years ago, before we had an EPA, there was a lot of stuff to clean up. And in the past 45 years, and in fact, after 20 years of the EPA, we had cleaned up pretty much everything. And then since about 1990, the EPA has just been on this regulatory tear, just over-regulating everything in sight, where, as you said, mud puddles become all of a sudden navigable waters of the United States that EPA has jurisdiction of, and so EPA can, limit how you use your property. So it's gone crazy, and President Trump has vowed to fix that.
Well, and that's just one glaring example. The EPA, created, by the way, by an executive order, most people don't realize that, by President Nixon back, I think, in 1973. And so when you don't have things that are created by Congress the way they're supposed to be created, things can run amok, right or wrong.
Oh, absolutely. As you said, President Nixon created the EPA in 1970. It was a sop to the anti-war movement, had nothing to do with protecting the environment. It was just total politics. whatever happened in the 1970s, it's not the 1970s anymore. It's 2017. Our environment is completely different. The skies are blue. The water is safe and clean. The rivers don't catch on fire anymore. So, we need to go after environmental protection with a sort of 2017 mindset, not a 1970 mindset.
Well, I don't disagree with you. Most rivers are, clean and pure. Of course, there's the river out west, the Animus River, that was poisoned by the EPA. Let's not forget that, Steve. I mean, the beautiful river turned bright yellow. There is that.
Right. Well, that was EPA's fault. That wasn't because of the mining company.
I understand.
That was EPA. So
and so here's the thing. Let's get rid of the myth here. There's some notion that somehow if you're a conservative or you support Donald Trump or something, you want dirty air and dirty water and poisoned land, and where does this nonsense come from? I hunt and I fish. All right, so nobody's more concerned about the quality of the land, the water, the air than somebody like myself, because I shop at God's grocery store, if you will. I cut out the middleman. I'm into free-range, organic red meat, elk, deer, moose, whatever. It's how I, give myself sanity. So this notion somehow that those around that are conservative, if you don't support the EPA, you must want dirty water. I mean, it's just so dumb. It's annoying because of just how dumb it is.
Well, right. I mean, everybody supports the EPA or an EPA, but no one other than extreme environmentalists with their political agenda support the over-regulation and overreach of the current EPA, and especially the Obama EPA. Wiped out 90% of the value of the coal industry for absolutely no environmental benefit. And there's too many environmental or EPA regulations that produce no environmental benefit that have tremendous costs on our society. And, ironically, the poorer we get, the poorer people are, the less they take care of the environment. I mean, this is true worldwide.
But here's what's true. I'm gonna jump in there because I gotta say what is true, Steve, and that is, of the industrialized nations, America is the cleanest, greenest industrialized nation in the world. We have a game management system that is the envy of the rest of the world. We have more deer, turkeys, deer, elk than we have had in 100 years in this country. Why? Because we have tags, seasons, and limits, and we take care of the resources. And when we don't have enough resources, we create habitat, not for just game species, but for non-game species like the Kirtland warbler, a bird, a songbird nearly extinct in northern Michigan, where Michigan and the DNR set aside chunks of land to protect and save that bird, which is now flourishing. The California condor that was almost at extinction. It's got a long way to go, but there are a few hundred individuals now because of American planning and American stewardship of the environment. Don't tell me how bad America is when we're the greatest, cleanest, greenest place on earth.
No, there's no question about that. That's absolutely correct, and not enough people realize that. Too many people fall for the, environmentalist agenda, which is just sort of green painted over their left-wing political agenda. The reason we can do all the things that you just listed and much more is because, we have a robust economy, and to the extent that environmental regulations are going to crush that economy like they have during the Obama administration, well, we're just going to be that much poorer, and our environment is going to be that much worse.
Well, the fact of the matter is we need to get a little bit less government, more people involved, because the truth about those that hunt and fish, back to that, I'm going to just beat this drum a little bit, those that hunt and fish spend real money, their own money, because every dollar spent on hunting and fishing licenses goes to help the environment in most places. In fact, it's required by law in places like Michigan that when you spend money on hunting and fishing, it goes to help out habitat, environment, cleaning up areas for ducks and geese and everything else you can imagine under the sun, game and non-game species alike. And that's why I come back to it, Steve.
No, that's absolutely true. And if you like, for people that like the word sustainable, well, hunters and fishermen are the greatest at sustainability.
Exactly.
Because if they don't sustain, the game and the environment, well, they're not going to have anything to do.
Well, that's right. Now, how do you combat this endless message, though, this haranguing, this vitriol, this panic attack mentality about if you do anything outdoors, if you step on a twig, my God, you've altered nature forever, and Chicken Little's right, and we're all going to die.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a real battle over the next 4 years. President Trump has promised to roll back the EPA and, have reasonable environmental protection, but to roll back the overreach, and the environmentalists are all set to combat him. So it's going to be an ugly 4 years, but hopefully he'll be successful. At the end of 4 years, people will see the skies are still blue, the water's still clean, and everything is okay, and people go, oh, yeah, he was right.
Yeah, everything's going to turn out okay. And I think you're right. But why is it, Steve, that the Republicans have such a hard time messaging? Is it because the media is on the other team? Is it because they don't have I mean, Mitch McConnell is about as exciting as watching paint dry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, for sure, the media's on the other team, and it's a lot easier to scare people than it is to explain why the scare is not true. And the environment is in a lot of ways a very complex subject because, there are many different subjects in the environment, plus, it's got science and economics and politics, and it's very complex. And it's not something that, everyone wants to be for the environment, but nobody wants to learn anything about it, which is one of my great frustrations.
Well, right. No, they rely, the left relies on, brilliant minds like, say, Bill Nye the Science Guy, a guy who has no background in science, but, he's a genius in science, though he knows nothing about it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true that he knows nothing about the environment. If for someone like me, I spent my life working on the environmental issues. Listen to him; it just drives me crazy because he knows nothing. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, a lot of the environmentalists. I mean, none of them know anything. They say they care about it, but they've never taken the time to learn about it.
That's exactly right, Steve. Good conversation. Author of Scare Pollution: Why and How to Fix the EPA. Also, the founder of junkscience.com. So if you want to find out more about Steve and what he's up to, go to junkscience.com. Steve, good conversation. Thanks for stopping in.
Thanks for having me. All right, bye-bye.
There you have it. All right. There it is. You've got to get involved. You can't just let this nonsense continue. This hour of the program brought to you by DTE Energy, providing safe, reliable natural gas to businesses across Michigan like this one. DTE Energy. Know your own power. You're listening to The Steve Gruber Show.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
One thing leads to another. Tell me something wrong. I know I listened too long, but then one thing leads to another.
All right, it's 45 after the hour here. Continuing our conversation on regulations and everything else. Tom Harris, Executive Director of the International Climate Science Coalition, and the Democrats are continuing their efforts to boycott the vote on Donald Trump's EPA pick. And that's also in light of the White House's threat to cut 2/3 of the EPA employees, a cut of 5,000 employees. Tom Harris here. Tom, welcome to the program.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Been a while since we chatted, but we were just talking about the EPA and a couple of times this morning. Where are we right now in this process with Mr. Pruitt?
Well, he got through the committee, the Senate committee that actually looked at the nominee. And the reason he did, of course, is because the Republicans changed the rules and said that they didn't have to have any Democrats present when they actually did the vote for the nominee, and now it goes on to the full Senate. And in fact, the full Senate, we're going to probably see a lot of resistance from the Democrats. They're calling him a climate denier and all these various things, but he's not at all. In fact, if you actually look at what he's written, he's saying the same thing as Trump said when Trump was being serious, because Trump, of course, has said some things about climate change that he later said were jokes. But, Trump said in July of this year, he told Fox News, he said, I said it, which is man-made climate change, could have a minor impact, but nothing to what the activists are talking about. And that's exactly what Pruitt said during his confirmation hearing. He said, sure, we're seeing climate change, but the degree to which mankind contributes is unknown, and that debate should be encouraged. Dissent is not a crime.
It's becoming a crime, though. Dissent is becoming a crime in America.
Well, that's right. It's interesting. On Friday, I had an article in the Daily Caller in Washington, D.C., and I'll send the link to you. And I was pointing out the similarity with the Spanish Inquisition of the 13th century. They specifically wanted to stop all heresy, any questioning whatsoever. And that's what the Democrats have done. Basically, they've turned it into a situation where many of the world's leading experts, here in Ottawa, we have the leading world expert in carbon dioxide. Okay, he studies it throughout billions of years, looking at the fossil record, and he's been misquoted and attacked so often that he won't even speak out in public now. And that's a real loss.
Why is he being attacked?
Because what he says is that the carbon dioxide levels in the past were much, much higher. Literally 10 times higher than today, and the Earth at times was very cold. He's showing that there is no correlation between carbon dioxide levels and global temperature. And, of course, for that, he's considered a denier, an anti-environmentalist. And yet this particular fellow, and I guess I can mention his name's Jan Weiser. He was given $1 million from the German government. His work was so outstanding, they said, you can use use it to spend any way you want on your research. So he sent graduate students all over the world to collect fossils from hundreds of millions of years ago, and then they analyzed the isotopes, the oxygen isotopes, and they produced a temperature curve over the last 500 million years. And what he showed, in conjunction with other professors who studied carbon dioxide, is that at times, in particular 440 million years ago, that was the coldest period in Earth's history as far as we can go back. And yet CO2 levels were 1,400% of today. In other words, it was 14 times. So, I mean, the geologic record does not support Al Gore and the climate scare. It's just not there. And, of course, that's why they want to keep people like him out of the debate.
Well, it's, so you're just saying it's a completely disingenuous, dishonest, non-scientific debate because those that actually know what they're talking about, and math doesn't lie. The mathematical certainty is the mathematical certainty, right? It's not like I feel this way. The problem is people have said, well, I feel, but the math says this, and math has no feelings.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting, people in all the parties should go to Washington in March. In March, the Heartland Institute, and actually Steve Milloy, who you just had on, he'll be speaking at it. It's a gathering of some of the world's leaders. I mean, people from MIT and Harvard, and people who actually know that the climate scare is largely a hoax. They're going to be presenting their evidence. They're also going to talk about policy and all the damage that the climate scare has done. So if people go to the Heartland.org website, they can learn all about this conference. It's open to the public, and politicians are probably going to be allowed in for free. So, I mean, they really should go. It's a day and a half.
So then
conference.
what happens, Tom, to the idea that 97% of all climate scientists, accept, global climate change being man-made, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it a million times.
Yeah, but they never ask the question that matters. I mean, the fact that we contribute to climate change and climate, it is warming, and it has warmed a degree and a half between 1880 and 2012. Yeah, okay, 100% of scientists will agree with that kind of thing. But the question that matters, Steve, and the question they never poll scientists about is, are our carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions, are they likely to cause dangerous climate change in the near future? And they never ask them that, because if you ask them, they'll say, I don't know, ask me in 20 years. Because the fact is the models they use to forecast future climate are not working. They're not even coming remotely close. And that's the only tool they have for forecasting future climate. They can look at past climate and see what CO2 did in the past and how temperature varied, but that does not support the mantra.
Here's another question. Who's to say that a warming climate is bad?
Well, yeah. In fact, that degree and a half warming since 1880 is a good thing. I mean, before that we were in the Little Ice Age, and the Thames River in London froze so thick that they had oxen on for frost fairs, they called them. And yeah, of course. I mean, if you look through human history, when it was cold, we had misery, we had crop failure, the Black Death, that sort of thing. It was during warm periods that we had the medieval warm period, the Roman warm period, the Minoan warm period. These used to be called optimums. In fact, the warmest time since the end of the last glacial period was about 8,000 years ago, and they called it the Holocene climate optimum, because until recently, warm periods were considered good.
I consider them good even today. You know why, Tom? I live in Michigan. I'm surrounded by a thing I like to call the Great Lakes, created by global warming. You got
That's
it,
right.
because without that, I'd be under about a mile of ice here today. Tom, I've got to run. Great conversation. Again, that's heartland.org. When's the conference?
It's the 24th of March.
The 24th of March, heartland.org. Tom Harris, always a great conversation. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, thank you.
It's the Steve Gruber Show, 52 after. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. All right, I'm going to tip my hat one more time. The Atlanta Falcons turned a fast start into a big lead, but the New England Patriots defied gravity. Tom Brady defied the odds, defied everything possible, showed every bit of his big game experience and every letter of his Hall of Fame resume. Brady leading the Patriots back from deficits of 21-zip, 28-3, with a throw early, throw late approach as the Patriots roared back to win Super Bowl 51, 34-28 in overtime. Absolutely breathtaking game. In fact, when I was there, and Ivy had fallen asleep, and I was watching the game thinking, well, I'll turn into, but then, I'll watch a little bit longer. And they scored. It's 28-9. Then they picked up a field goal. It's 28-12, and I'm looking at the clock going, it's a long way from where they need to be. And then, boom, they scored and got the 2-point conversion. Then you're going, well, this could really happen. And then at, 3-4 minutes to go in the game, Ivy woke up, watched the rest of the whole deal, watched the overtime. It was compelling to watch an individual that good. Tom Brady named the game's MVP for the 4th time, an NFL record. He earned MVP honors in 2001, 2003, and 2014. Josh McDaniels calling him the best ever, saying there's no flinch. There's no flinch in Tom. Tom Brady, meanwhile, said they are all special, the Super Bowl wins. This is an incredible team. I'm just happy to be part of it. And yeah, why wouldn't you be? He finished 43 of 62. The most attempts in Super Bowl history for 466 yards, 2 touchdowns. The most in Super Bowl history as well, surpassing the 414 Kurt Warner threw 17 years ago. Brady had his first interception return for a touchdown, and that looked ugly, but in the end, it just didn't matter. And it brings me back to something I tell a lot of people, but I tell my kids for sure, and that is, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. It's how you finish that really marks who you are, because that defines character. Taking away nothing, by the way, from the Atlanta Falcons, an amazing football team, and Matt Ryan, I am sure, will lead that team back someday soon as well. Whenever you're down, whenever the odds look too high, just remember this. Keep the faith, my friends. I'm Steve Gruber. We'll talk tomorrow.